Winnipeg Trail Nation's Mike Irwin joining us on halftime. Always appreciate your time, Mike. How was your weekend?
Baseball was okay. Basketball was bad. It's just, that's the way it goes.
Is that how you Is that how you detail whether your weekend was positive or negative? It was based upon how the teams played that you're covering?
That's pretty much it. I mean, because I got to deal with all this stuff. You got to come in and answer questions, and you got to put up with fans going ape over stuff. It's just like this thing with TeSlaa's. I mean, he goes out and does an amazing transformation in the last 2.5 months. Goes from being a guy that probably was not even going to get drafted. He's an undrafted free agent. And then he turns in a performance when you combine all of the stuff that he did. They said it was in the top 0.5% of all 3,500 receivers in the draft, in the combine, going back to 85. I mean, it's astounding. So if the NFL believes in this stuff, and they say they do, then he's got to be what? A second-round draft pick now? I don't know if he'll go that high. But it was just amazing. I mean, this guy did not run a 4.440 here at Arkansas. He did not look physically like that. But instead of giving him credit for doing one of the greatest jobs ever of preparing for the draft, they're all blaming Sam Pittman. It's Pittman's fault. Should have played him more. Well, he didn't look that way. He wasn't that fast the whole time he was here. I mean, so that's the part, It bothers me that some fans can't be happy when somebody does something good. They always have to throw something negative into it. I'm just amazed at what he did. I don't know that I've ever seen an athlete prepare for the draft, for the combine, better than he's done.
Yeah, I think everybody that's from the University of Arkansas that went there to the combine, Mike, I think they're all going to get drafted. What about Landon Jackson? Now, wouldn't that be something though if he was drafted before Andrew Armstrong? Which I don't think that'd happen, but that would be something. But Landon Jackson, he stole the show when he was there. I thought he was a top 100 pick before the combine. Now I think he's a top 50. You see Landon Jackson go in the first 2 rounds?
Maybe, and that's the whole point. When you look at the performance of the Razorbacks in that thing, and then you consider all these people that are blaming Sam Pittman for it. Well, if he's so bad, how did this happen? The program is not in the terrible shape that people say it's in, and I think this is good news. I mean, anytime you've got players doing well in the combine, that helps your recruiting. I mean, coaches can go out and say, "Look what we did with this guy. Look, he's going to play NFL football." And that, more than anything else, gets you good players, because that's why you go to a school. You want to go to win, but you also want to get to the next level.
I just wonder if I don't know what his time was in the 40. I don't know what his time was in whatever shuttle run they might have done at Arkansas. It just appears that he's a better athlete than I gave him credit for. Has all of this just happened in the last couple of months, or is this really just a case of somebody that has not grown into his body, but just maybe just been a workout fiend really for the last, maybe 6 or 7 months? It just still feels like he might have been underused. It's great that he's going to get drafted and put on this amazing show, but I don't blame fans for feeling like he might not have been used as much as maybe he could have been.
Well, maybe underused, but no. When he was recruited, he was a 4.6 guy. And the word on him was he had good hands, ran good routes, and I remember the reaction when they got him out of the portal. It was like, are you kidding me? This is how we're going to win in the SEC with guys like this? And he got here, and he did a good job. I don't know, if you're going to blame somebody, blame Bobby Petrino, not Pittman, because he clearly made him a backup to, Satania, who, in my opinion, underperformed. But you can always do these things in retrospect. But I'm just talking about when a guy, and I do think he was getting faster. I think in the A&M game we saw him get wide open on one play and showed speed I didn't see before. So I don't think the speed just came in 1-2 month period. I think he was getting there. But I do think he did some things in the last 2.5 months, because it's not just his 40 time. Everything he did there, every one of those things he did was top level. And that's why he's in the top 0.5% of all wide receivers ever at the combine. That's what gets me. And I think you got to give that kid credit, because I think guys know going in, I got to get ready for the combine. I got to do this, or I got to get ready for pro day. But when a guy does something like that, you just go, look what can happen if you really dedicate yourself.
Hey, Mike, speaking of somebody that has real speed and who's electric, Jordan Anthony, who wins the 60 meters, what are your thoughts on him as a receiver? I mean, he's going to be a receiver again next year. Can he? How are his hands? Can we translate that into football speed?
I don't think there's enough data on him to know, because they didn't use him much. I think he was at A&M, right? They didn't use him much. So we'll see. The thing you got to hope with him, in order to be effective and have him be effective, because he's a speed guy, is you got to hope that offensive line, and they've gone in and totally transformed it through the portal again, but you got to hope they block better for Taylor Green, so he's got enough time to not just have to quickly get it to somebody, on a shorter route, a crossing route or whatever, that you got the time to drop back and then see that guy going deep and get it to him. But that's another possibility when you look at the speed he's got now. I'm not sure what he's going to do with regard to spring football. I don't know if he's going to take some time away from track now and do spring football and then come back for outdoor. I haven't asked yet, but that would be an interesting thing to find out.
Hey, Mike, let's get into the basketball game against South Carolina. Should we have seen a performance like this coming? Maybe not necessarily against that team, but with all the minutes you get 7 guys playing, all the energy they'd had to put into the Texas game, does it make any sense? Not 14 points and a half or 3 out of whatever it was in the first half shooting, but should we have kind of expected a dud at some point soon?
Yeah, I think so. You kind of hope it doesn't happen, but you were in such a hole. And, Cal talked about we went 5-3 in February, and the 3 losses we had were close, and they were all to top 10 teams. So you didn't have a bad game in that stretch, that 8-game stretch. They didn't play bad. And they cut down on these little gaps they had where they didn't score. Well, now this was a whole game of gaps. I mean, it was amazing to watch in the last 6 minutes of the game. It was like somebody flipped a switch, and they turned back into that other team. So what in the heck happened? He explained it pretty good. He said when the shots aren't falling, the one thing you have to do is start playing better defense. And he said we did the opposite. We got so, into trying to figure out ways to score, and we did crazy things on the offensive end that weren't going to work, and then we just stopped playing defense, and you saw them just rip Arkansas apart. Adou was the one that surprised me. Jonas had been playing really good defense, and he wasn't effective at all. And so they're in a bad position, guys. They are, because anybody that watched Vanderbilt beat Missouri, those guys are you just almost don't beat them in Nashville. And then Mississippi State plays that same kind of in-your-face defense. So if, let's say, Arkansas just wins 1 game now, okay, well, what does that do? Do you get in? And then there were these metrics that everybody follows. In Texas, you beat Texas twice, and they're still ahead of you in the net, and they got beat by 16 at South Carolina. So what does all this stuff mean? And in the end, what I'm left with is you just got to watch Selection Sunday and cross your fingers, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Isn't that fun? Isn't that a lot of fun to be waiting and expect? Kind of, I think a lot of people will be expecting that Arkansas could end up as the 69th team out of 68, the world's smallest violin team. And
the issue becomes, what does the committee say about the SEC? What do they conclude? Do they conclude that, hey, this was a year in which 12 or 13 teams from the SEC legitimately should get in? If they do, then I think Arkansas is in. But do they decide that, or is it more like 11, or even 10? I don't know. And then, guys, we're going to find out once the tournament starts how legitimate that was. And how do these SEC teams do once they're not playing each other anymore? Because if what we think is correct, they're going to start beating everybody else again. But how does the committee, evaluate that?
I haven't always seen it work that way either. Like I remember, you'd see this in the 90s sometimes, and in the first decade of 2000s with the Big East, where you'd have like Pitt, Pitt, Georgetown, UConn, even Marquette. When D Wade was there, and
Maryland,
great teams that would beat the crap out of each other throughout the regular season, and there would be great teams. If we're going to watch all three of these teams are going to end up in the Final Four. You're going to have three in the Elite Eight or something, and it didn't happen. Sometimes the teams that beat themselves up because their league is so rugged, they're beat up by the time they get to March.
Absolutely. I think we saw that in football in the SEC. So you're right. Do you pay a price for doing this? And then now there's this talk again. You guys probably saw it, where the SEC supposedly getting together with the Big Ten and talking about this super football conference with maybe 38, 40, 44 teams. You invite a few teams from the other leagues, and you don't play any mid-majors. You just play each other, and you expand the playoff to 16 teams, and then you just. That scares. I don't even want to watch something like that, because you can't take all of these other teams and just reduce them and say you don't count anymore. Go away. I don't want a Louisiana Tech or even an Arkansas State or teams like that to just become totally irrelevant. You're not good enough to play with us, and it would be done. Why? Because the networks are saying, if you want big-time money from us, if you want more money from us, we don't want those teams on our airwaves. We want all of you. We want to pick out the top 48 teams in the country, and we only want to put those games on TV because that will get us ratings. And then what have you done? You've just, in the name of money, you've just taken 2/3 of the football team across this country and said, you're not good enough. Go away.
Hey, before we go, Bub had asked about if we have any information on Adou Thiero. You're a real journalist, Mike, so I don't know if you've been able to dig and find anything out about this hyperextended knee. Do we have any sort of understanding as to how long Adou is out?
Supposedly it's a meniscus tear. And those things, what happens is a lot of times they go in and clean that loose cartilage out. And it's anywhere from a 2, 3, 4 week time to come back. It depends on how much of a tear there is, because sometimes you get irritation and you get swelling and there's pain, and then after a week or two it kind of goes away. And it sounds like to me, because they haven't made any announcement, haven't made any decision to do any sort of arthroscopic surgery, that what they're doing is waiting and seeing if the swelling goes down and the pain goes away, and we can go ahead and play him at some point. Because if they have to go in and clean it out now, he's probably not going to be back in time for the end of the season.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here.